Step away from the dog! The shout cracked through the terminal like a whip. Grace didn't flinch. Her hands rose slowly, open, empty. Radar, the golden retriever by her side, shifted forward half a step, his posture calm but alert. A guard surged toward them, eyes wide, hand on his baton. In the scuffle, a leather wallet slipped from Grace's pocket and hit the tiled floor with a slap. It fell open. Inside, a faded Navy ID, a silver pin glinting under the fluorescent lights. The leash trembled in her grasp, but she held steady. No words, just the weight of control forged by decades of training. Radar let out a low, steady growl. Not a threat, a warning. The guard didn't listen. "I said step back!" Another step, a baton raised. Near Gate 7, a teenage girl with a cracked phone case hesitated, then hit record. "Don't," someone murmured. But it was too late. Grace stumbled backward. The leash slipped from her hand. Radar barked. One sharp, protective burst. People turned, the guard lunged, and in that exact moment, with a veteran on the ground and her dog still defending her, the world held its breath and watched. The first sound that morning wasn't an alarm clock. It was the creak of the old wooden floor as Grace Ellison stepped barefoot into the kitchen. She moved quietly, careful not to wake Lily, the kind of careful that came from years of shipboard silence, the kind that didn't need thinking. She filled the kettle, struck a match, and waited for the soft hiss of the flame. Radar patted in behind her, tail wagging once before settling into his usual spot by the back door. Sunlight had just begun to seep through the lace curtains when Lily's small footsteps tapped down the hallway. Grace turned, warm smile ready. "Morning, sailor," she said gently. Lily rubbed her eyes and climbed onto the wooden bench near the table. "Did you sleep?" "Some," Grace replied. "You always say that," Lily said, yawning. "Do heroes not sleep much?" Grace chuckled softly and walked over with toast and a boiled egg. "Not always, but they always stand back up." Lily nodded as if filing that away for later. After breakfast, Grace knelt beside the couch and opened the small medical kit inside Radar's vest. She checked the emergency inhaler, the glucose tabs, the laminated folder with his certifications. Every zipper closed clean, every detail in place. She clipped the vest onto Radar gently, brushing his fur once with her hand. "You're my better half, you know that?" she whispered. Radar licked her wrist in reply. In the living room, a faded photo sat on the shelf. Grace in uniform, navy dress blues, standing beside a man with the same calm eyes. Her late husband. The frame leaned slightly, always just barely off-center. She left it that way. By the time Lily returned from brushing her teeth, the sun had warmed the porch steps. Grace combed her granddaughter's hair with steady fingers, tying it into a neat ponytail. "Are you nervous about the trip?" Lily asked, watching her in the mirror. Grace paused, then resumed the motion. "Just focused. I don't like busy places." "Why?" Grace smiled softly. "It's not the noise. It's how fast people forget to look at each other." Lily didn't fully understand, but she didn't need to. She reached out and hugged her around the waist. "Don't let them forget you." Grace held her tight. "They won't. I've got Radar, and I've got you waiting." They stepped outside together, the screen door clicking shut behind them. Grace knelt once more, not to adjust her shoes or her pack, but to run her fingers along the wooden post where a navy blue boonie hat hung, sun-bleached and still. She didn't wear it anymore, but she touched it every time she left. Radar stood at her side, perfectly still. Lily waved from the porch. "Remember?" Grace said gently. "You don't have to speak loud to be heard." The bus ticket was folded in her jacket pocket. The papers for Radar were secured. The sky was clear and her posture upright. She didn't know what waited for her in that terminal. But she moved forward the way she always had, quietly, precisely, without needing anyone's permission to stand tall. The bus terminal was colder than expected. Concrete floors, metal benches, flickering lights overhead. Grace stood in line with radar pressed against her left leg, his vest snug, his gaze alert. The leash rested loose in her hand, a practiced calm between handler and service dog. People bustled past with oversized bags and restless children. A baby cried 2 rows over. Somewhere, a vending machine hummed loud and steady. Grace waited. When her turn came, she stepped forward. The scanner beeped once, then again. A flat, synthetic sound, one she'd heard 100 times before. Nothing serious, just a delay. The guard motioned for her to open her bag. She did, unzipping the top compartment of Radar's medical pouch. Inside were syringes, sealed, sterile, along with an inhaler, documents in a plastic sleeve, and a collapsible water bowl. "What is this?" the guard asked, narrowing his eyes. "Medical supplies," Grace said. "He's a certified service dog. Documents are here." He didn't look at the documents. Instead, his hand went to his belt. "You can't travel with injectables." "Step back, ma'am." "I have a doctor's letter, please. I said back up." His voice had changed. Louder, rigid. Other passengers began to glance over. Radar sensed the tension. His body shifted slightly, muscles taut. His nose touched Grace's thigh, a signal. He could feel her pulse rise. "Is the dog growling?" The guard snapped. "No," Grace said. "He's alerting. That's part of his job." But it was too late. The guard reached forward, hand outstretched. Radar let out a single bark, sharp, short, defensive. Gasps echoed nearby. Someone dropped a cup of coffee. And suddenly the space between them, that half-step of misunderstanding, turned to danger. "Control your animal," the guard shouted. Grace raised both palms, calm. "He's not aggressive. He's trained. Please, look at the vest." The guard moved anyway, quick, unthinking. He grabbed for the leash. Radar braced. Grace stepped between them instinctively, not fast enough. The guard struck first. Not with a baton, but with his shoulder, pushing forward to force distance. Grace stumbled back. Her heel caught on the metal edge of a bench. She went down hard. Her shoulder hit the floor with a dull thud, and the leash slipped from her fingers. Radar barked again, circling her, frantic, not attacking, defending. "Get animal control down here," another guard yelled from the desk. A dozen phones rose into the air, recording. Somewhere in the back of the crowd, a girl in a red hoodie tapped her screen, zoomed in, captured it all. Her caption read, "They just tackled a veteran with her service dog." At gate 12. Grace didn't speak. She didn't move. One hand on the floor. One breath pulled slow through her nose. She looked up at the fluorescent lights, eyes glassy but clear. A man stepped forward from the crowd. Not an officer, not security. He reached down to help her, but before he could, someone else shouted, "Back away from the scene!" Grace turned her head. Radar nudged her side. No one looked at the papers that had spilled from her bag. No one saw the military ID on the floor beside her. No one yet realized who she was. The waiting room's far corner smelled faintly of bleach and burnt coffee. Grace sat on the floor, her back against a smudged wall, hands resting calmly on her knees. Her palms were red, her right sleeve torn at the elbow. Radar lay across her feet, still panting, but calm now, his ears twitching with every sound. His leash had been recovered and clipped to a bench leg nearby, just out of her reach. Across the room, 2 guards muttered into radios. A manager stood stiff with a clipboard, avoiding eye contact. No one had spoken to her in over 10 minutes. The papers from her medical bag had been gathered haphazardly, shoved into a plastic tray. The documents she had tried to show, laminated certification, prescriptions, a signed letter from the VA hospital, all untouched. Grace breathed in, held it, let it go. She'd taken harder hits. At sea, storms didn't ask permission. And she'd learned long ago, stillness was sometimes the loudest resistance. "Name?" one of the guards asked finally. She didn't raise her voice. "Grace Ellison, U.S. Navy, retired." The guard blinked, wrote something, then walked away again. Radar shifted, resting his head on her shin. She stroked his ears once. "It's okay," she whispered. "They don't see yet." Not far away, the teenage girl in the red hoodie sat on a plastic chair, hunched over her phone. Her fingers moved fast. The caption she'd typed was simple. "This is not how you treat a veteran. Watch until the end." She hit post. In under 5 minutes, it had over 10,000 views. A janitor pushing a mop noticed something on the floor, a small black wallet, half open. She picked it up, looked inside, and paused. "Sir?" she called softly to a supervisor. "This woman?" She showed the ID, creased and worn, with Grace's name beneath a faded Navy photo. "She's a vet. A real one." The man took the wallet, nodded, and set it down beside a stack of bus schedules. Didn't say a word. Grace saw it happen. Her ID now sitting between a coffee-stained brochure and a pile of lost and found scarves. Like it meant nothing. She closed her eyes. Outside the terminal, the wind was picking up. Somewhere a horn blared. More people passed in and out. Most didn't look, some glanced. A few stared, confused. But the video kept climbing. On a dusty bookshelf in a military nonprofit office 4 states away, a phone buzzed. An aide glanced down, then stood. "Sir, you need to see this." In the corner of that screen, or frozen mid-bark, eyes full of alarm, was Radar. Behind him, Grace, on the ground. Her face calm, her back straight. The aide handed the phone to the man at the desk. He hadn't seen her in years, but he remembered. The terminal doors opened without fanfare. No sirens, no shouts, just the steady rhythm of polished shoes against the tile. People turned, not because of noise, but because of stillness. It moved with him. Harold Easton was older now, slower. The uniform had been replaced by a civilian suit, dark and pressed. But the bearing remained, the kind that didn't need introduction. He crossed the terminal like it was a flight deck. Not a wasted step, not a glance spared. A young assistant trailed behind him, clutching a folder and trying to keep up. The security supervisor stepped forward, clipboard ready. "Sir, we're handling—" Easton didn't stop walking. The supervisor faltered, then stepped aside. Across the terminal, Grace was still seated on the floor, one arm around Radar, her back straight. She looked up only when the footsteps stopped. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her. It had been over 20 years. He knelt down, carefully, bones protesting. "Grace," he said softly. Her eyes scanned his face. Recognition sparked, tired but clear. "Easton," she said. "Didn't expect you to show up in a place like this." "You always did have a way of causing trouble in port," he replied. She let out a breath that might have been the start of a laugh or a sigh. Either way, it softened the air around them. Radar's tail thumped once on the floor. Easton turned to the guards nearby. "Who's in charge here?" No one answered. He stood. "Then I will be." He pulled a card from his jacket. Not a badge, not a threat. Just a name. One that still held weight in corridors most people never entered. "I want this woman's documents returned. Her medical equipment rechecked. Her dog released. Now." No one moved. Then, one by one, they did. Radar was unclipped. Grace's papers brought over, the tray of scattered items set gently beside her instead of dropped. The teenage girl with the red hoodie lowered her phone. Her mouth parted slightly. It was happening. Easton didn't speak to the crowd. He didn't need to. He turned to Grace. "Grace Ellison served this country for over 3 decades, he said, voice low but firm. She commanded ships. She trained sailors. She buried friends, and she walked through every storm without asking for a spotlight." A pause. "She didn't come here for attention. But now that she has it, we're going to make damn sure it means something." The terminal was silent. No announcement, no applause. Just the weight of what had been said, settling on every person who'd watched and done nothing. Grace rose slowly, supported not by Easton, but by her own knees, her own strength. Radar stayed beside her. She looked around. No anger, no tears. Just that same quiet authority that had been ignored 2 hours ago. Easton placed a hand on her shoulder. I already called the governor's office. They're expecting your version of events, not theirs. Grace nodded. I'll write it tonight. We'll make sure it's read. By then, outside, news vans had begun to arrive. The video had passed 2 million views. Veteran forums lit up. Congressmen were tagged. The story wasn't a whisper anymore, but Grace said nothing. She just walked to the front doors of the terminal, Radar pacing at her side. Easton followed her. As they passed the bench where the manager still stood, Easton paused. This isn't about protocol, he said. It's about memory, and the price we pay when we forget who we're looking at. Then he was gone. The house looked the same creaky porch steps, the same crooked screen door, the same flower beds, only now freshly tended. But something had changed. Inside, the windows were open. Light spilled across the floorboards. A tray sat on the table with 2 mugs, one half full, the other untouched. Lily was drawing at the kitchen counter, headphones on, her crayons scattered like tiny flags. Radar lay nearby, chin resting on his paws, eyes half closed. Every now and then, his ears twitched, but he didn't move. Grace stood by the porch, her gaze on the horizon. She wasn't waiting, just watching. A pickup truck pulled into the driveway. No sirens, no guards. Just Harold Easton in a navy windbreaker, holding a small wooden box. Grace met him halfway. He didn't say much, just held it out. She would have wanted you to have it. Grace took the box. Inside was the sun-bleached navy boonie hat. The same one that used to hang on the post outside. The same one her husband wore when they built the porch, folded neatly, soft with time. She smiled, quiet. A smile not for him, but for the past. With slow steps, she walked to the tree in the yard. The one where Radar liked to nap, where Lily once tied a ribbon so the wind would remember us. She reached up, hung the hat from the branch, let it sway. No one said anything. Easton stood back. Lily peeked from the doorway, then stepped outside, barefoot in the grass. Grace turned, kneeling beside Radar. You did good, she said softly, brushing his fur behind the ear. He blinked, content. The wind picked up, gentle and steady. The hat moved. The leaves shimmered. No one filmed, no one posted. Just a moment, and then another. The story didn't end with noise, or apologies, or headlines. It ended here, in a yard with a girl, a dog, and a woman who never asked to be seen, but who stood tall anyway. If this story moved you, type "still standing" in the comments. Your voice matters, and I read everyone. If you haven't subscribed yet, here's your quiet reminder. Thank you for being here.